Welcome to this episode of the Period Panel. I'm delighted to welcome Rachael Burford to the show. Rachael, it's so great to have you on.
I'm really pleased to be here and, being part of really important conversations around women's health.
So for those that don't know who you are, can you give us a quick introduction?
Yeah, so as lovely introduced by you there, my name's Rachael Burford. I'm a former England international rugby player. I played for over a decade at the very top level and still play at domestic level with Harlequins. Been really fortunate to have some incredible moments in my career, and probably the highlight would be winning the Women's World Cup in 2014. And then off the pitch, I've also co-founded the Girls Rugby Club, which is all about grassroots and helping create more opportunities for young girls in rugby and talking about topics that they're not used to talking about. And I also work for International Rugby Players, which has been the part of the player voice globally around the world across all issues within the game of rugby and working with World Rugby on that.
So you have a lot going on anyway.
Yeah, just a few things, but I love it.
So we're obviously chatting here on the Period Panel. Can you remember when you got your first period?
Yeah, I can remember it really clearly because my mum and sister, who both play rugby as well, they were away on rugby tour and I was staying at my sister's house, my other sister's house. And it happened overnight and I woke up and found myself hadn't started my first ever period. So it was a little bit embarrassing because I had to kind of tell my sister about it. It obviously happened overnight, so you can imagine that then I had to show her in the bedroom. And I remember, because we were meant to go swimming, so it meant we couldn't go swimming that day either. So it was quite an embarrassing thing that first time, and I was quite young. So, and because it wasn't directly to my mum, that was a bit challenging.
Obviously, 50% of the population is going to have a period at some point. So why do you think it is that the topic is still so taboo?
Do you know what? It's such a strange, when you actually say it out loud like that 50% have it. It happens to a woman every single month. That how are we not talking about it more, and how is it not normalised? And I think, for as long as I can remember, it's just never been seen or put on the agenda to talk about. And when you talk about within sport, the only time I really spoke about it was to talk about what contraceptive you might want to go on to stop that period from happening whilst you're at a big major tournament or something. So I think the level of understanding around it and, the level of being brave enough to have those conversations and it being open is probably what keeps it in the background. And like I said there, but when I first started my period, there was a lot of embarrassment and maybe even some shame about it. And I think that is probably, a system thing right from when you're a young child at school, when you get your period. I remember distinctly at junior school, we got given some non-applicated tampons and a little picture diagram, and that was all. And so I think it even just that makes it feel like, oh, this is a secret, you don't talk about it, here's your little pack, now you go away and deal with it. And I think right from the get-go, from when you're such a young age, it's not just an open spoken thing, which means it continues to be this taboo, and that narrative really, really needs to change.
And I know you're doing work with younger girls and that, and we're talking about girls in sport, and in Ireland it's twice as many girls drop out of sport as boys by the age of 14, and I know worldwide there are similar statistics as well. So if we can open up the conversation around periods, around menstrual cycle, get rid of some of that shame and embarrassment that you're talking about, how much of a difference do you think that could make?
Yeah, I think it can make a huge difference. I think if you normalize anything and help girls understand that you're not the only one that's going through what you're going, and actually that breaks down those barriers and those concerns. And I think, I've been in team situations where players that or I know I'm about to come on my period, my mood changes, I'm slightly different. But if we're aware of all of that and we can be accommodating to that and supportive towards that, then actually that just breaks down that barrier, because I know it's going to happen every single month, so I need to be able to manage what that looks like every single month. I can't just kind of run away and be quiet about it every single month. And I certainly think the more that we can do to normalise it and talk about it, and this isn't just women, I think, you know, men need to understand that, you know, most men have a female in their life, whether it's a mother, a sister, you know, a daughter, a girlfriend, a wife, and you know, they're going to be going through these things. So I think there needs to be like a general understanding from both female and males, but also just being kind of open enough to discuss them and talk about them, because then it's normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And like in a sport like rugby and in a lot of other sports, like there's still predominantly male coaches, so it is something that they are going to come up against. And if we can have that open conversation, whether it's between the players, whether it's between a coach and a player, you know, depending on the age group that coaches may have, they may not always be comfortable in being the person to talk to, say if it's 12 or 13 or 14-year-old girls, but to definitely start the conversation even within the club. What was your experience of conversation around periods and menstrual cycle through your playing career?
So definitely at grassroots, you know, growing up, never was it spoken about. I even think even when I moved from Plex, obviously I played my youth rugby was with a mixed squad, so it was with boys. It certainly was never spoken about then. And then I went into an all girls team, and I can't recall any conversation around, you know, anything to do with periods, other than, oh, are you on? Like that was the extent of the conversation. Or now in the change room, it's like, has anybody got a Tampax, or has anybody got anything, because they might have just come on their period or they've forgotten something. So they were kind of like the extent of any, you know, words around it, let alone a conversation. And even at my international career for a really, really long time, there was never a deep dive into it. It was always slightly touched on every now and then, or but it was never kind of like sat down and actually go, right, let's really look at your cycle in depth, and let's make sure that you understand your cycle as an individual, and then now how can you maximize your time around your cycle. Because I think there's so much negative that can come with what people's perceptions and what you physically go through with having your menstrual cycle, but there's also some gains to be had as well. And I think that's the other side of it. It's like, well, actually, if we understand it, then we can actually use it as a superpower of ours. And so I think the more conversations that can happen, and just being open, but I do think women have a responsibility to actually educate themselves as well. I think a lot of women just kind of go, oh, I have a cycle, or I'm on my period, and they think that's it. But actually there's 4 stages, and all those 4 stages, you're going through different things, and your body needs different things, and your body can give different things. But I think a lot of women, and probably again my point earlier around being a system situation, you know, when I was at school, I was given a little packet of tampons, and that was my education on what my cycle was. So for so long I just thought my period was for 5 days once a month, and that's it. That's all to it. You know, I'm just going to bleed for 5 days, and then I won't bleed for a while, and then another 5 days. So I think the more that we understand it is really, really important. And with the Girls Rugby Club, we did some really good, we've done some couple of menstrual talks, and we had so many, like to your point around male coaches, we had so many male coaches going, oh, how do we approach this? How do we support players? And, you know, they've come up with some brilliant ways and initiatives where, you know, the player group have come up with a word that they feel more comfortable saying and using. They make sure that they've got supplies in their medical bag, you know, all these things that just, again, make that environment a lot more welcoming and normal for the young girl being involved. And I think the more we can share with those types of practical ways of breaking down those barriers and making sure that the experience is good, and it's not a case of, you know, you end up putting a young girl off because she's had a bad experience around her period, and then suddenly that becomes her experience, and then she moves away from the sport. So I think there's some great ways that we can really improve those kind of conversations around it.
Yeah, and like obviously everyone's going to be different, and I suppose as people get older as well, they can maybe become a little bit more comfortable talking about it. I think like some of the key years to connect with girls are, you know, through their teenage years. Usually if you see people stay involved in sport from kind of 18 to 20 plus, they probably have like figured out like the logistics of things. They're probably, you know, less concerned about like, you know, shaving their legs, like all those other things that girls can be a bit self-conscious about. But it really is critical, I suppose, during those like, you know, 10, 11, 12, like right up to kind of 16, 17 to, you know, make people feel comfortable, make them educated around the topic. And it doesn't have to be all overwhelming in one go. Like you can kind of start off, I suppose, with the logistics and like how, you know, how you can still manage sports and, you know, letting people know about the different products that are out there, and just starting the conversation. You obviously have played for England and you've played in white shorts. Like there's a lot of conversation there around, you know, should people be playing in like darker shorts, whether it's navy or black or like a dark green, versus in white. I know that's a conversation that a lot of clubs are having, and you know, a lot of people are very passionate about it, and some people are a little bit on the fence because they're like, you know, want to stay true to kind of their club. But like how, like what is your kind of thoughts and opinion on that, you know, especially at club level?
Yeah, I think it's like you say, it's quite a challenging one because, you know, some people won't even consider it or think about it or worry about it. And then there'll be some people that feel really uncomfortable during their period when they're, say, representing England and they've got to be in white shorts. But again, I think there's now solutions. I think I never ever heard about period pants or undershorts that support that element. There's like, you know, I work with Adidas, and I've got leggings which have another layer of protection. I've got cycling shorts that have another layer of protection. So when I'm doing my activity whilst I'm on my period, there will be the products that I use. And I think if we can protect, and then those values around wanting to play in your club colours or wanting to play in your country's colours can stay true, but you've got that level of protection around you, then that's probably going to reduce those worries and concerns. But having said that, players might not be comfortable playing in those undergarments, etc. So I think it's a challenging topic, and it's something that probably is going to take a bit of time to discuss through. I did an article about this a couple of months ago, and my biggest thing was just talk to the playing group. So you might have an idea that it's not acceptable, and or somebody else might be on the other side of it going, well, no, I think it's fine, we can put these products in place and it's fine. Just sit with that playing group and say, right, is there an issue here? And if, you know, 80% of the players are like, no, I feel absolutely fine, I feel comfortable, you know, you might have, I don't know, 20% that don't have a period because they're on some form of contraception or, you know, or method to reduce that. So I just think whatever those stages are taken to get to those decisions, just making sure that the people who it's affecting are involved in those conversations.
And I think you had mentioned before, like international level is one thing, but then at club level, you know, if it is just switching the colour of shorts, that it might be the right choice to keep those 11, 12, 13-year-old girls in sport. 100%.
And I think, you know, if we know that that's going to be an area of barrier, then you can take those kind of decisions, you know, into your own hands. And I think, you know, when you're playing sport at the age of 11 or 12 or 13, and there's no disrespect, I know a lot of people compete at very high level at those ages, but they're the ages where we just want them to enjoy themselves, be active and keep coming back. So whatever the barriers are that potentially could get in the way. And there was a survey around young girls why they drop out of sport is because they sweat and there's sweat patches on their clothing. So why not use something that's going to not show sweat patches, even those girls are going to still sweat, and then we're going to keep them in sport. So I think anything that is supportive and not harmful, then 100% act on it quickly, especially at those ages.
So you've obviously been playing at all different types of levels, from, you know, grassroots at some stage right up to international and elite level, and you must have picked up some tips along the way. So when it comes to you know, training sessions and that, like, what are some of the top tips you have around your period and your menstrual cycle?
So I think it's really important that you track your cycle, because otherwise you're just kind of guessing. And so that's the first thing that I have done for a number of years now. I've got an app called Fit Our Woman, and it is one of the most simple but informative and useful things, because it comes with it tells me those different stages, and it also gives me advice, like general advice around, you know, okay, you're in stage 1, you're probably going to need a little bit more time to recover, you're probably going to need to increase your carbohydrates. Training wise, you can actually push yourself in the gym this week, you know, go for those few extra reps or that higher intensity. And then it will also give you the other side bit where stage 4 is like, actually, you need to slow down a little bit this week. You need to do some more kind of primers because your balance might be slightly off, and you've got more elasticity in your joints. So making sure you're doing some more priming before training. And I found that really, really useful to then prepare me for whatever training I've got in front of me, and also, or if I've got a game that weekend, etc. So it just allows me to really plan. So kind of by doing one thing, tracking, it allows me to pick up all these other points. And there'll be days where, you know, you'll try and do all the right things of eating the right things and moving the right way, but sometimes you do just lose that kind of, you have that fatigue about you, and so what I've done to combat that is I take active iron, which is an iron supplement which just helps support your energy levels consistently, and I find that has had a huge impact on just daily life, but in particular during my period. So whenever I used to get my period, it would be the 2 days before, my energy levels really, really drop. The first day, I was always in mega pain, and that goes right back to my school years where I used to take a day off because I didn't know how to manage it other than just riding away. And so during my period, it's stabled that, and it's actually given me, I wouldn't say more energy, but it's kept my energy levels at a really reasonable rate. And I think that's important, that you find ways that works for you as an individual. And so taking a supplement has really, really supported me. And it's only really been in like the last 2 years that I've considered that, because I think, like we are losing blood, and a big part of your blood has a high iron count. So when I do weight training, I have protein to support that training and my body, but we never talk about, well, what supplements should we be having in order to support our period? And it's such a simple thing, but I wonder how many females actually put the two together.
Yeah. And you mentioned there that you took a day off school. Talk to us a little bit about that. Like, how long did that go on for? Like, what impact, I suppose, is your period having on you at that stage?
Yeah, so I used to often take the first day of my period off school if it clashed with a school day, or I would attempt to go to school, but often would find myself in the nurse's office, like crippled with cramp, just feeling really low, fatigue levels dropping, and so that probably impacted my confidence around my period. And I guess it probably made it quite obvious that I was having my period as well, as there's a bit of a common theme and pattern. But again, I remember we went to the doctor about it and was just given some painkillers, given some specific prescribed painkillers to support the pain, which I was on, I'm pretty sure it was daily. So I started my period when I was 11, so I was quite young to remember exactly how or what those tablets were or how often I took them. But again, I'm sitting here even reflecting right now, like that shouldn't be the only solution. It's just take this pill and you'll be fine. And so it had a huge impact when you think about it, on, you know, one day every month taking off school over a school year, you know, and I wasn't somebody who was academic, so I couldn't really afford to miss those days off. But yeah, and then finding only way to manage it is by using pain relief medication. Again, is probably a highlight of where the education was even there, even kind of diving into how we can support a young girl who's going through that differently.
Yeah, and when did you kind of experience the pain like reducing, or what did you do to change that you weren't maybe relying on pain relief all the time?
So I then, when I was kind of at the age of like 16, 17, my rugby started to get a lot more serious. And so that was when then I had a conversation around, or was given some advice around, well, you can use contraceptives so that you can reduce your periods or not have one at all. So I went through a stage of having different types of contraceptive pills to basically either get rid of my period. And again, that was a little bit born out of fear around, if you're on your period, you might get injured and all of that, as opposed to actually really understanding that properly. I probably only understood a snippet of that for, oh yeah, right, okay, I get rid of my period altogether. So again, it's just that lack of education. But the pain I still get some, but not to the level where I can't function or don't want to function. So yeah, I definitely say that I've learned how to manage those kind of symptoms and the ways forward without relying on medication.
Yeah, no, it's definitely tough. And like, you know, I guess the reason that I kind of asked a little bit more about it was because, you know, to think that like one day a month that you would have to step out of school, and like depending on, you know, the person, like if that carried on, because I know sometimes people can kind of grow out of some of the symptoms, but if that carries on into your work life, it can be very challenging as well. And you know, it is a significant kind of amount of time, you know, over one's like lifetime or over a couple of years that they're kind of having to step out because of, you know, something that we can't even control.
Yeah, and I think, you know, this whole conversation is around why is it such a taboo when women are going to go through this for a very, very long time, you know, until unfortunately they might hit menopause, and then that could reduce. But I think, again, it's like you want to get the best out of you. So if you understand you enough, and if people are educated around that, then that allows you to be your best self, which then allows you to, as you say, whether that's in the working world or whether that's in school, you're able to be your best self. And yeah, it just shocks me how we're still so timid about it, or we're ashamed about it. Or, you know, if we go to the toilet, we've got to have a special bag that tampons are in that nobody sees, and it's like, it's just a period that happens, like it happens.
yeah It's normal.
Yeah, it's absolutely normal. There's nothing disgusting about it. My body has to do this in order to function. And yeah, it's hard to, I think, especially for young girls, to think there's something to be really proud of. And I'm not sure this is where we want to get to, but you know, if you're not having a period, then that can often mean that there's some underlying health issues and concerns. So, you know, celebrating the fact that your body does go through this every single month is, you know, incredible. And if it's managed well, then like I said right at the start, it can be used as a superpower for you as well.
Yeah, and that would be something that we would try to make people aware of. Like if you are missing your period, like if you've had your period for a while and then you start to miss it for a couple of months, like it is usually a warning signal. So definitely go and speak to a doctor and, you know, find out what the what the issue might be, because it can be down to like, you know, underfueling, overtraining, tiredness. Like there's a lot of different things. It's just about making sure that you're, you know, balancing everything okay and making sure that you have everything under control. I do have a question for you. You know, like people would say sometimes, oh, they must be on their periods. Like, what do you think of that kind of comment or remark?
Yeah, I just think it's just a real lack of awareness of, you know, what's happening to that female's body. Like naturally, when we go through those stages, your body's changing and it's reacting differently to the chemicals that are going on, and I just think it's just really sloppy. It's an easy way to have a pop at someone when actually the person who's saying that to you may be in the wrong and they've done something wrong and I've reacted in a stern way, and suddenly now it's like, oh, she must be on. Like,
and you can hear people say it to men as well, and it's always like kind of negative connotations, whether it's a man or a woman, but it's just like kind of using, you know, your period and what people associate people's mood and humor to be on their period.
Yeah, well, I think, but they're the things that we probably only ever talk about. You know, we only ever talk about how you get a mood swing, or be careful, be a bit you know, sensitive around them this week, because we talk about the PMS symptoms probably more than anything else. And so, you know, for everyone's focus to then be on that. But if we change that narrative around, you know, the positive side of things, then, and we get people thinking and talking about that and aware of that, then actually maybe they don't just focus on, you know, if I wake up and I'm in a bad mood, like it has nothing to do with my menstrual cycle. It might just be you, actually.
Yeah, it can, like it definitely can, like it may be nothing to do with like anyone's menstrual cycle or the fact that they're on their period. As you said, it could just be, you know, you know, someone is irritating you, and it's just like that's kind of maybe a go-to kind of you know, slag, or like someone teasing you kind of over that. And it's like, as you said, it's like a negative connotation with that. But the other thing is, like, you know, sometimes people do experience mood swings, but also like there can be a bit of like stress associated with like having your period, and that's nothing to take into consideration any like pain or anything that people might be going through. But just around like logistically, like, you know, if you're out of your normal routine, it can be like quite difficult. Like, you know, do you know if you're going to have access to your bathroom? You know, if you're like on the go for a day, like things can be all kind of a little bit haphazard, which can kind of have someone's mind kind of running to try and like figure out how to, you know, manage having their period while also managing getting through like their daily activities. So, you know, while you might not seem like A1 like you normally do, it can be like that you're just trying to figure out, like, you know, getting to the bathroom, and you know, people don't want to leak on their trousers or on a dress or like whatever it might be, or if it's involved in sport, like on the pitch. So there can be a lot going on kind of behind the scenes, and it's not something that we always kind of, you know, sometimes you're happy enough to talk about it, but then sometimes at the same time you're like, just let me kind of try and figure it out and give me a bit of space to sort it out myself.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that one around, which I think is becoming more of a topic, is making sure that there's toilets that are suitable for women. You know, how many times have I been in a situation where there is no sanitary bin, or stadiums aren't fit for purpose for women to be in? And, you know, those conversations are happening, and that involves everybody, because there'll be people in events or stadia, or, you know, people who are part of organising that are men and like that are women. So the more we bring in those conversations, then the more we can make those, even those barriers, you know, a situation, oh, I'm not going to go there because there's no facilities for me to be able to change my tampon or my sanitary towel. And yeah, I think it's just, there's so many little moving parts that can just really change the whole kind of vision, and like you said earlier, the perception of a menstrual cycle.
And I suppose the last thing is, have you any other advice for people when it comes to menstrual cycle or periods, and maybe particularly for kind of 12 and 13-year-old girls?
I think definitely the tracking one is really important, and I think ask questions. You know, that if you think about how much information is readily available, and, you know, be careful where you get your sources from. It is a bit of a minefield, but the opportunity to learn stuff online now around your periods, it is really there. Whereas, you know, that didn't exist when we were younger. We just got the scary diagram in the tampon box. So I definitely say kind of educate yourself, track it, and I guess just be proud of it. Just be proud that you have a period, because it is a really special thing that your body is doing. And then the last one I would say is just try your hardest to be brave around it. So, you know, there's times where I'll just say it as it is. You know, oh, I'm on my period, I need to go change my tampon, because the more we do that, the more we can help normalize it.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thanks so much, Rachel, for taking the time with us. I think there's loads of like good stories. It's great to keep the conversation going, and great to get some advice off you. So thanks a million for joining us on the period panel.
Thank you, and thank you for creating a platform to allow us to have these conversations and keep getting it out there worldwide.